This
90 when he
conference will
started.
now be recorded.
So at the age of 19, he started it. So it is never too early or never too late to start. And again, you don't really need capital or money to start it. All you need is a great idea, your will to want to do it, and to start penning down your ideas and see where you're going to take it through. Now, I'm going to talk about a lot of you ask, what are the important skills required in entrepreneurship? So I will list down a few which all of you have, right? Each one of us has. The most important thing about entrepreneurship is that you're out there to solve a problem. You're not there to do more of the same. So you look for a gap in the market and you want to creatively find a more effective a solution for that problem. Or if there is already a product in the market or a service, you want to come up with another service or a more effective service that can be more efficient. So you're driving efficiency, you're trying to solve a problem, you're trying to solve a gap, you're trying to create certain plugins to the into the ecosystem that can make the working of the infrastructure a lot smoother and better. What you need is critical thinking, which I think all of you have plenty of, that you have to be able to think that rationally. You have to be able to think logically. Would this work? How would it work? How am I going to make this idea happen? So to be able to think critically and make your solutions become more product driven or service driven. Teamwork and autonomy is very important because alone, while you can do a business or you can do a startup, it's always great, especially if you're thinking of something which requires different skill sets, right? Which requires a lot of finance, it requires somebody who needs to look into product, into marketing, into technology, which may not be your forte, right? All of it. Then it's good to have a team of co-founders who can bring in those expertise, put it together so the ability to be successful or your success rate will be a lot higher, and it'll be easier for you to execute and take your startup to a better level. Ability to prioritize is very important. So a lot of you said, oh, I have so many exams and so much of coursework that happens during college. How do I start my ideation and plan during college? So let me ask you, and I say this to a lot of students when I go and give talks on entrepreneurship. If you just cut out the amount of time you use on your social media, just whiling away, looking at Facebook posts of what your friends are doing, who's wearing what, who went where, who's posted what, and you take away your time of binge watching of television, trust me, even after your coursework, you can take out 1.5 to 2 hours a day to put into this startup idea that you are passionate about. So your time and your ability to prioritize will come from how passionate you are and how driven you are to take your idea to the next level, right? Time and resource management in entrepreneurship at any stage, whether it's a start stage or even 10 years later when the company has grown big, is always the most important tool. If you are not effective with your time, all of us only have 24 hours in a day, and I'm a big advocate of the fact that if you don't complete your work in 8 to 9 hours, which is a slotted time for effective, productive working, then you're doing something which shows inefficiency in you, right? So how well can you prioritize your time and resources will determine how much you can get done in that day, and then have time to strategically think for more. Because once you start your startup and you're into your entrepreneurship journey, you will realize that you'll get bogged down by a lot of operational work, right? And you will not grow unless you take out time for strategic work. So that strategic work will only come when you do time and resource management, delegation, creative use of your time, effective use of your time, and then keeping some time extra for your thinking and reading. Being adaptable and responsive to change is a very, very important tool. As you see today is a live example, COVID, right? Whether it is an established business, whether it's a new business, whether it's a service-based business, or how schools deliver education, right? Everything has today pretty much put people on this track that if you don't respond to the change today, with the lockdowns, the schools had to go online. They had to move away from the traditional way of teaching and start telling the teachers, you got to up your skills and you got to go online and start delivering lessons. Otherwise, kids are going to miss 1 quarter of school. Same thing is happening with y'all. Y'all are doing your assignments online, sitting from home. So the schools and colleges have adapted, businesses have adapted. I teach dance classes, and suddenly I realized that for the next 1 year, I may not have my students who want to go to a gym or a fitness studio where there's a lot of crowd, and they will want to, maybe just do walks where there are less people around them. So how did I innovate? I decided I will run online dance classes over Skype. Why not use the power of technology, innovate, adapt, and say I can still reach my audience through the power of technology? A lot of healthcare, right? People, my doctors, I remember, they called us and they said, look, you can't come to the hospital. We don't recommend you coming. But what we can tell you is that if you have a need, you call in and we can do telemedicine for you, right? So we can do this entire engagement through phone and through Skype. And I think everyone's innovated. So how your business is going to survive and grow is going to depend upon how quickly you are to changing with the changing times, with the new technologies that come in, and being adaptable to it. Otherwise, you'll die. So you look at, our traditional photo films, right? We used to take pictures, Fujifilm and Kodak. And today, it's nowhere to be seen. Nobody uses it. And because they didn't adapt, today other people have taken over, who've taken the leap in digital cameras, in taking, the phones, which are now your new age cameras. So if you don't innovate, you are going to get pushed out, no matter how big you are today. So innovation and adaptation is one of the key elements of any business, no matter how big or small they are. Branding and marketing, especially for startups like yours, when you all start, is going to be your biggest tool to decide your success. And you have to start that from day one. So because if you don't have money or you're strapped with resources, the only way you can get business from is using the power of technology again and digital marketing to get your voice, your product, your service be heard by millions of people around the world by using technology like email campaign marketing, WhatsApp marketing to reach people across all geographies, getting businesses from there, doing video con calls without even having to travel. So there's a lot of free availability of marketing and branding out there in the market. You just have to tap into the resources. Financial bootstrapping is going to be a very important element of entrepreneurship for a long, long time. And even after you get funding and investment, I want to tell you this, it's a myth that we think, oh, I've got 100 crores, so life will become easy. No. Now you have 5 people. So earlier you had your mom or your dad telling you, wake up on time. Why have you not folded your clothes? Why didn't you eat your breakfast on time? And now at work, you're going to have at home, you will have your parents saying that. At work, when you come, you will have 5 investors or 10 or a board member of 20 who will be telling you what to do, what not to do, what you didn't do right, what is not going right, how you need to change your business model. So there are no free lunches in life. There is always a cost to be paid for when you want to raise money. If you raise money from the bank, you have to pay interest for it. You raise money from the investor, it's not free money. They are expecting returns from you, and they are going to sit on your shoulder, on your head, and trying to tell you what you're not doing right and what you need to do. So you have to be ready to put all your hats in that basket, all your time and energy in it to make sure that you are living up to the expectations and the commitments you did. So initially, if you learn how to bootstrap and be financially conservative, it can help you in the long run to always follow that methodology and continuously stay cash rich, right? And be financially stable. Another important part of entrepreneurship is having empathy, social emotional learning, to be very sensitive about the environment that you're operating in, the infrastructure of the place that you're operating in, the people who work with you, and the societal problems that you're trying to address. So again, if you have empathy, you will absolutely inculcate that in your business idea, and you will look for solutions that are going to be very, very effective, and thus that will lead to the success of your business, right? So empathy at any point, personally or professionally, is a very, very important factor in any business idea. And then the last but not the least, I would tell you is that you have to be very strong, right? People say out of 10 startups, only 1 make it big and 9 roll up. And I would say maybe out of 15 or 20 startups that happens, right? Because there's so many more startups in today's world. But I will also say this, that if you're persevering, if you are not, if you are ready to ask for help, right? If you're ready to go out there and say that, look, I don't know this, I need help, I don't know this person, can you help me to connect? I need help in understanding how financial modeling works, can you help me with this? You will be surprised more than ever that people are so willing to help, even people who you are scared to approach, right? So always, and even if your startup doesn't reach a point where you feel that, oh, this is what I had envisioned for it, that this is how I will measure my success, even if it doesn't reach there, you will learn a lot from your journey of having started the business and taking it somewhere. And after that, you may decide, you may still continue on, and it still can be a great business. At some point, it can pick up, you can be innovative, you can decide that, okay, I want to leave it here, and instead I want to go to a corporate, get more experience, or use this experience for my corporate work. That's an option. You can become a consultant. You can, there's so many things. So entrepreneurship, I would say, is like a crash course, right? What you learn 4 years in a college, when you're an entrepreneur, you probably will learn that in 4 months or even less, because you're doing everything from operations to technology to finance to marketing, digital marketing, and you're continuously learning. So that's a very, very important characteristics of entrepreneurship, to be able to learn, willingness to learn, and willingness to do. The good thing is, you're going to suddenly elevate yourself from being a job seeker to a job provider, which is a great, great feeling. You're going to play a very important role in increasing the employment in your society, in your country. I have always been an advocate of women entrepreneurship. I talk to a lot of girls and I mentor them about why it's important for a woman to look at entrepreneurship as a career choice. So if there are a lot of women in our webinar today, I'll take a very short time and I'll tell you why it's important. Women in general, just the way our society is structured and the way we are structured, you know, our DNA, we go through a lot of crossroads in life. You know, you will be a student, then you'll work. At some point, you might want to get married. When you get married, like after I got married, I had to move my country. So I had to, you know, suddenly think of changing my job, my career, or whatever it was. Fortunately for me, the company I worked with had an office in Silicon Valley, so it was easy to move. But if you don't have your company having offices in a place that you're moving, then you're suddenly left with, what am I going to do? Why do I have to leave my job because I have to move my city because I got married? And then after that, you might come to a crossroads where you decide to have a family. So again, you might decide that, oh my God, do I need to take maternity leave? For how long? You may not be emotionally ready to go back to work once you've had the baby. You may want to spend time with them. And at that time, when you're ready to go back, you may realize that, oh my God, I've had this long gap and I suddenly feel left behind and I'm finding a hard time getting a job. So there are a lot of crossroads that we come across. And through my personal example, I'll tell you, I have moved 3 countries with 2 small children, all because my husband was changing his job. And I mean, he was working with the same company, getting rotated. And I, you know, to make new friends, to start your own business or whatever it is, I have only been able to do this because I was an entrepreneur. At every crossroad where I felt was this junction point where I needed to spend more time on myself or on my family, I scaled down the business a little bit. I hired more instructors, the classes went on through them, and I did less of my own. And the moment I felt that I had more ecosystem help, I had house help, I had family support, and suddenly my strength was back, I scaled up the business myself. So I started going back to doing more classes, more corporate workshops, and all of that. So what entrepreneurship does for a woman is it gives you flexibility. And that, I am telling you through experience, is going to be the key factor in determining your happiness over the course of your life. If you have flexibility and if you're able to continue to work, no matter how small or how big, throughout your life and feel that, yes, you know, my mind is productively engaged. I still have my financial independence. I'm still doing something which is related to my line or my passion or my interest. You will be happy. And I personally believe that if a woman in the house is happy, the family will be happy, because we have a very strong ripple effect around the people around us. We touch so many lives because we are cooking, we are with the children, we are with the husband, we're a life partner, we are with helpers. We are engaging with so many people on so many different levels, with employees, with employers, that if we are not happy, we are not going to make people happy, right? Social entrepreneurship, some of you wanted me to talk about that. So the social entrepreneurship part, I will tell you, is that it is, it's a great cause. So if you're very passionate about a subject or about a problem that is there in the society, and you want to work on that, you want to work with artisans, you want to work at the grassroots level to change the way the medical system works, to change the way healthcare access happens to the rural India, then this is your forte. So social entrepreneurship can be done in a lot of ways. It can be done with a profit element, but the cause is to make bigger impacts in the society. So it's not just that you run an NGO and that's called social entrepreneurship. No, that's a myth. Social entrepreneurship is that your cause will affect many lives, right? And it will impact the society to make the society function in a much better and efficient way. And an NGO is where you register a company and which is not for profit. So you do have a salary component, which is basically to cover your basic expenses and a little bit more. But the entire idea of that is to help people at the grassroots level or whatever your cause is, to make sure that that is done without a profit motive in mind, right? So again, there are two distinctive factors. I believe that social entrepreneurs are so powerful and we owe so much to them, because it takes a lot to pull that element from you inside, to always work for others in mind and not for your own personal interest or cause or your well-being. So you're doing it for the cause of others. So I did this, I've been doing this certificate at Harvard University, and it's called Entrepreneurship for Emerging Markets. And one of the case studies that we did was of Narayan Hridayalaya. It's in the healthcare segment, and I had never read about Narayan Hridayalaya in detail, about Devi Shetty particular, and that whole case study opened my eyes, and I was wowed by this person. He's a surgeon, cardiac surgeon, and his goal was simple. He said, I want a social enterprise. I want to make cardiac surgery and medical surgery, medical intervention accessible to all sections of society, especially in rural India where people have no money to pay. They don't have insurance. And he said, how can I do this? And he said, how can I enable people to live longer because they are getting the surgery at the right time? And somebody is willing to do that for them. And it's okay if they don't have money to pay for it. And I was blown away, absolutely, by his ideology, by his passion for it, and how he actually made it into a reality. And today it is a Harvard business case study. And they were saying that when the kids join the MBA program, this is one of the first case studies that they work on. And they're continuously working now with Narayan Hridayalaya to see how more effectively can they make their functions, can they make the medical reach more effective for people, not just in India. Now they're doing medical intervention, and I hadn't even heard of it, that now they do telemedicine and medical intervention to countries and small cities in Africa, in Asia, and they're able to have, medical practitioners from their call and connect them to experts over here sitting in India who can look at the reports in real time, give them medication or assist with surgeries and make it happen. So you are not traveling, you are not somebody who is unable to come and travel so many miles to get good medical service, or who is not being able to get catered to in their own country or city, is able to access everything through their medical practitioner, through satellite and online, and get their work done. I think it's a beautiful concept, and it just came out of one person's vision of how can I provide that, and everything stemmed from it, an idea. Now I'm going to just try and motivate you a little bit and talk about the successful and amazing student startup stories. Everyone's heard about Dell. Some of you probably use their computers and laptops. So about Michael Dell. He started this at the age of 19. And what was his vision, his idea? That he wanted to sell personal computers directly to consumers. And he started with only $1,000, right? And today you see what Dell is, a global conglomerate. Everyone is using, they are into everything. So an idea that came out of probably a dormitory or his own room, where he got it simply from an idea with very little money and his passion, his conviction that he's going to make it happen. The problem, again, like I said, remember, as an entrepreneur, you have to solve a problem for you to be successful, right? For people to buy into it, buy into your service or product. He was solving a problem, and he reached directly to the consumers. People bought it, and the rest is history. The second one is, a lot of you may have used and heard about Dropbox. They started their company or their idea at MIT, both of them, and it is basically the problem they were solving were that none of the emails allowed you to share really big files, and people had a tough time, sharing it with each other through pen drives. And if you were in a different location, how do you send it? So they came up with Dropbox, which is simply a file sharing service, and now, of course, it is used also as a storage service where you could share your files, and which had high security, and it could be used by people to send very big files. And it just caught on like a fire, and today Dropbox is what it is. iCraft is another company, very, very innovative, especially in the US. I don't know how many of you may have heard of it over here, but they started it when they were studying at Cal Poly in California. And what they said was half the number of households in the US at least own one Apple product, whether it's iPhone, iPad, your Nanos, whatever it is. And they said that when these products, something goes wrong with them, there is no way to get it repaired, right? There's no third-party service to repair it. You either go to an Apple store, it costs you an arm and a leg. So what they came up with was basically certified technicians who could repair any Apple products. And today they are there in, of course, all of the United States, but worldwide. And people go to them, and the service centers are everywhere. They hire so many people. So just a small idea, the solution of, okay, how do I help people work with their phone when there's a glitch in it? Sometimes people want to move to another country. How do you open the lock system and let it work in another geographical condition? All of this is provided by them. So a simple problem that they may have faced became into a solution and became into a company that provided solutions to many others. One of the biggest stories of our times is Google, right? Who knew? And this is a very personal favorite of mine, because when I was teaching my classes in Silicon Valley, I lived in Palo Alto, and I had one of my classes running over there, very close to Stanford campus. I had a lot of students from there. And one of my students was actually one of the biggest venture capitalists who used to come to my class. And he was the wife of one of the professors who was an advisor for both of them when they were doing this project, and when they had just come up with the idea of Google and they were working on it. And so she would take me out for lunch, and we would talk, and she would tell me so many stories about these two kids who were working on this amazing idea that would revolutionize the world, and how technology has been changing, how Silicon Valley is in the forefront of it, and the minds behind it and all of that. And today I just see Google, I'm like, wow, two kids, from a university in their dormitory, just putting their minds together and creating something which is so phenomenal, which has touched so many lives in so many different ways. Where today, no matter what we do, the first thing we do is, if I want to know a muhavra in Hindi and I don't understand it, I go to Google and say, Google, how do you say this? Or how do I translate a language from one person to the other when I travel? Or how do I create forms? Everything, Google is everywhere, and they're continuously innovating. They have these group of people who are there, who are engineers, who are PhD students, who don't do anything but continuously innovate to make the products better, more efficient, and to come up with new products that can help to make this world a better place, right? In our own country, you've seen Flipkart, right? You've seen, they've all come out of our own areas. You see Devi Shetty, in healthcare. We see Paytm. So there are so many stories to be told. There are so many stories to be heard. and that can motivate you and that can make you understand that it is not that they had something special, no, or they were destined for it. It is that they took the risk and they made it a point to continue to work on their idea, even though people would say to them that, oh, what are you doing? Do you really think this is going to work? I don't think so. It made them convinced that what I think, the passion I have, I'm going to make it work no matter what. And then they found solutions and they found ways to make it happen. And they are where they are today, right? So, what I want to urge all of you today is that there is never a good start point. You know, somebody starts their entrepreneurial journey when they're 50 or 60 or 65. Somebody starts when they're 80. My daughter loves to make chocolates, and she learned a lot of making chocolates. And of course, because I do so many seminars on entrepreneurship, and I'm so big on women entrepreneurship, I said, hey, why don't we? You love doing this, and instead of being sitting in front of TV, if this is going to make you do something creative, use of your time, why don't we formulate a company? This would be a good exercise for you to see how a company is formulated, how branding is done. And we actually founded a company for her, with her. It's called Sweet Tooth. And now during Diwali and Christmas time, she just makes different kinds of exotic chocolates with all pure elements. And now, she does her own research and I help her. And we do marketing, branding on Facebook, Instagram, and we get orders. She gets orders, and whatever she's able to do on weekends or maybe after school hours, she does, and she makes some extra pocket money, which she saves. And, hopefully she wants to buy a 3D printer for printing chocolates, customized printing. And I told her, you do it from your saved money, what you've earned. So what I'm saying is that you can start at the age of 11, how she did. You can start at the age of 19. You can start at the age of 50. It's not about the age. It's about you feeling that I think I'm ready to embark on this journey. And why this lesson is even more important today is because a lot of you who are graduating next year or the year after, right, or this year, you will realize that because of the way the global lockdowns have happened, the recession that they're predicting, economic recession globally, a lot of experienced people already losing their jobs, right? And companies suffering their top line and not knowing whether they're going to survive tomorrow or not. So many unemployment applications being filed in US, you will realize that you might have less companies coming to campus for job placements. You may not find your ideal job. So this, I would say that instead of feeling sad and depressed and what's going to happen and this was my bad luck and all of that and kind of doing a self-pity on yourself, I would say look at it as an opportunity in disguise. Maybe this has happened because you were meant to take a separate route. Take this time. If you don't get a job, that's fine. What do you have to lose? Why do you have to have a pay package? What baggage do you have that you need to kind of, you don't have big EMIs right now. You don't have a family to put, food for. Maybe not. But what I'm saying is you don't have a lot of things to worry about that you will have probably when you're 40, 45, when you have a lot more people who are dependent on you. So this is the best time, I say, to take risks. This is the best time to experiment, to explore, to give yourself that chance that, look, I'm starting from scratch, from ground zero. What will I lose? Nothing. The worst that's going to happen is that you're going to come back to where you started, but you're going to have so much of experience, which when you use this and go back to a corporate job, they're actually going to respect you for what all you've learned, because somebody who took up a job when you started your entrepreneurial journey would probably have just moved this much in terms of their learning and the capability, but you would have gone this high, right? Because you've done so many things in your path and your journey of entrepreneurship. So I really believe that use this as an opportunity, start to ideate, right? An idea is a simple way to think like, what am I good at? Put some buckets. What are the 10 things that make me feel really happy? That when I'm doing it, I lose track of time. I lose track of who's around me. I lose track of eating food because I'm so happy doing it. That's my passion. So when I dance, I have been dancing for 18 years, right? I have not missed a single class in 18 years. If I don't feel well, I pop a Crocin, but I go to class and I suddenly feel better. Why? Because I am alive when I'm teaching, because it's my passion, it's my interest. So I the body pain, the neck pain, everything goes away when I'm in class, and it surfaces back the moment I'm out of class. So what I'm saying is, think of what are the things that you're really passionate about. Can you create a business idea out of that? If you're great with technology, or you see a gap in the ecosystem, in the world around you, or a certain product that you wished was there that would have made your life easier or somebody else's life easier, can you create that product? That's where your idea could come from. So there are plethora of places where ideation can come from. You just have to sit down and write it down, and then think about each one of them, how it can work. One of the most important points to which a very good idea can come is, as in the what I learned through my Harvard course was, it's called the institutional void. Now, what is an institutional void? So they say in developing countries, because of the lack of infrastructure, because of so many obstacles in the society, like say corruption that we face, or because of lack of information that is available to all freely, buyers and sellers are unable together to complete a transaction, which creates an institutional void. Now, when you see this, you can actually create an opportunity right there for you, and to see how can I reduce this void or remove it, and how can I make my business plan such that it can make the operational efficiency in the society or the infrastructure stronger and better, right? So that's one of the things. Now, I will also touch upon, now I will start touching upon the questions that you guys had portrayed. And I want to tell you this, one of the first questions that you all said is, what if I fail, and what will people think of me? So I want to tell you this, that first thing about being an entrepreneur, or if you want to get onto this journey, please be prepared that things may not work out your way. And most of the time things won't work out your way. But when they do, they will give you so much happiness, and they will give you so much traction that it will make up for the times that things didn't work out for you. I'll give you my personal example. I failed the US driving test 5 times. Okay. I passed the written test every time, but I just kept failing the driving test. And I remember telling a friend of mine the 4th time I failed, I said, I think I'm destined for public transport. And in Silicon Valley, if any of you have been, the public transport is not so robust as you see in the East Coast in New York. So if you don't know how to drive a car, you're handicapped, right? And at that time, there weren't any Ubers or, Lyft. So, but I kept trying. So you could only register for your driving test after 1 month of the last test that you gave. So I would register exactly that day for the next test, the day that I failed. And finally, in my 6th attempt, I passed, right? So yes, it took me time. Yes, I failed so many times, but if I had given up there and said, I'm just going to sit at home and I'll let my husband keep driving me everywhere, it would have just created a huge obstacle and constraint in my life, in my growth. But I just kept persevering, and I kept pushing myself. No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. How bad can I be at driving? And finally, one day I improved and I passed. And then the rest is history, because my entire work was dependent upon driving to various places to conduct my classes, right? So please don't be hesitant to fail. Look at Jack Ma. That is a live example, a much bigger example. Imagine when he talks, I was listening to one of his TEDx talks, and he says that, I mean, how many times he's failed, and at what age actually he started to see success. KFC rejected him for a job application. 5 people applied. He was the 5th person. 4 people got accepted. He was rejected. He applied for a government job. There were 50 jobs. 49 people were, or 45 people were taken. And the people who were rejected, he was one of them. He said the number of rejections that he has faced before he saw Alibaba become what it is, that it becomes so used to it, and he had become so strong that now no matter what happens with Alibaba, it doesn't deter him or doesn't make him sad or morose. He just knows that it's going to work out. Things have a way of working out, and you have to believe that. You have to believe that things will work out for you, and that positive energy will make it work with your hard work. Now, one of the questions that were there, I'm going to read out is that how do you raise funds in today's environment, right, with the global recession coming in? So to that, I will say is that, look, anyways, when you start up and you have just an idea, you can't go and raise funds, right? Nobody, and especially in today's market, the extra cash is definitely going to get reduced that is out there in the market. The investors are going to become a lot more stricter and prudent with the way they evaluate startups. So you can start your business without money. Like I said, come up with an idea, validate your idea through your focus groups, through your family, through your professors, and see what feedback they give you about your idea. Do they think, oh yes, I think this is brilliant, this would solve this problem. Oh, if it was me, I would have definitely bought this product. So see, get validation from them and start to create your groundwork for that idea. The most important point that an investor will look at when they want to give you money, or you pitch to them, or you go to them, is that what is your ability to create revenue stream for your startup? If you've got that down through your ideation phase, that this is how I'm going to make money, that will not just give them an idea that how you intend to make money, but give you also a direction. And like I said, the prioritization of work, effectiveness of resources will come from the fact that you know how you're going to make revenue, and then you will drive yourself towards it. And once you're able to prove to an investor, or even to your parents who you may want to borrow some money from, to like just create a prototype, that look, this is how I'm going to make my product, this is how it's going to help, this is how I'm going to start making money out of it. If they are convinced, trust me, it'd be a lot easier for you to convince people who are outside, right? So again, don't let money or capital be the factor that stops you from becoming an entrepreneur. That's an excuse. First, start with the basic step of what your idea is. Get your idea validated, because there are many more steps before getting to the capital funding part of it, and see how you're going to make that business work. Be creative with your ideas, okay? Be creative with your solutions. Be creative with your revenue generation models. Automatically answers will come. And honestly, if you don't need funding, don't go out there and seek funding, because when you are taking funding, nobody's giving it to you for free. They're going to take a share in your equity, and when they take that equity, you will lose a lot of control about how you want to run your business. So there are goods and not so good part of taking funding. I got a question. So Susmita asked that how much does it really play a very strong, important a role in starting a new business? The capital investment. I just answered your question that it's important, but it's not a must. And it's not something that you absolutely need to start a business. Absolutely not. You can start a business with zero money, right? How to proceed if you have an idea and no funds? Be creative. Use creativity. What are the key assets for becoming an entrepreneur? So I will say perseverance, not getting pained by rejection and not feeling sad, and asking for help and being out there. Use your network to get help. Ask for help from people, and you'll be surprised. Like I said, people are very willing to help if you ask. The problem is, as we grow along in our age and in our abilities of, how we are accomplishing through our educational academic life, we start to ask less questions, because we start to believe that, oh, everyone should think that I should know it all. If I've come to IIT, if I've come to BITS, and if I ask this question, will people laugh at me that, oh, he doesn't even know, or she doesn't even know this much? So we keep quiet and we don't ask those questions. I urge you to ask questions. It's okay. There are 10 other children who are probably thinking of that same question, but they are feeling shy, or something is stopping them from answering them. Have the guts to stand out there and say, I don't know this, can you explain it to me? And once somebody has explained it to you, you know it. So it's as simple as that. So you ask, you will get help. You don't ask, you're going to stay with half knowledge, and that's not going to help you. What are the requirements for the funding? We've already said that, a solid business plan. Okay. Somebody wanted to know about organic farming. Yeah.
Nidhi, sorry to interrupt. We have some questions on the chat that students have typed in. So if you see an overlap somewhere, you can match up with these questions. Do you have any more questions out there?
Sure.
Which you want to...
Well, I have actually some more. Let me answer those, and if I've missed out on some, you can just highlight and I'll do that.
Sure.
So some of them was that somebody wanted to know about farming in today's world. I would say organic farming is an amazing idea. And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in agri-technology, agriculture, it's a wonderful, wonderful area to dabble into, because tomorrow's world is going to see a paradigm shift in the kind of food we eat, the health products that come in, the purity of products, and all of that. So I think farming and agriculture are going to be a very, very good field to be in. And if you have interest in it, absolutely. How is COVID-19 going to impact the manufacturing industries? It's definitely going to take a toll, right, in that. But I think the manufacturing industries also have to innovate in the way they work. So I think more automation will be seen, more robotics coming in will be seen. So you will see more startups coming in which are going to create enablement for automation in the manufacturing sector, and also tele-manufacturing. You know, that's going to be like the next big buzzword, where things, again, like we said, you know, people are going to think innovative ways to operate and to reach, even if they have to do things from home, how can they automate and make sure that the factories are running and things can happen. I would, then there was that, okay, if I don't have money and I have fear, like I said, how do I start a business? I'm just saying that you have nothing to lose when you start. So I don't think you should be scared. You should just not think too much, put your head into it and drive yourself into it, and things will work out. You will learn how to swim once you're in the dark waters. So it's entrepreneurship. Yeah, let me put it. It's like swimming, right? But if you don't know how to dive and somebody pushes you in the water, you will do something like a survival instinct, right? To stay afloat and to try and save yourself. You'll do exactly that in entrepreneurship. You will do whatever it takes to make sure you survive, and you will make sure that you will come out of it absolutely strong and healthy, and your company will be healthy. How do I do ideation and get validation? I would say create your own focus groups, like I said, with your professors, with families, with known tools, with friends, and try and get validation from them, what they think of your idea. Do a lot of research and effort to give it shape. What will I do if my startup gets wound up? What will be my opportunities in India and abroad? See, I will say that most of the companies understand the power of entrepreneurs and the skill sets that they gain in themselves when they embark on this journey, that how daring they are, and they will always be up for taking up challenges, learning new things. They're not going to be scared. They're not going to be the kinds who will just sit and do what is given to them. They will always be more forthcoming. And that is what companies look for in leaders. So even if your startup doesn't do, or you have to wind it up at some point of time, always remember one thing: you will have a job for yourself, and a good one at that, right? My husband, after 7 years of dabbling in entrepreneurship, has gone back to the corporate world, and he's gone back in a leadership position. So they welcome that now he's completely all-rounded, rather than just being focused in the one function that he was great at. And now he can actually lead a company, right? So people understand that, and they will give you credit for it. And the other thing that could be a huge opportunity for you is to become a consultant for these startups, so that they don't make the mistakes, or they are able to cross over those hurdles in a much more smoother fashion, because you're able to guide them and do things for them. How to rebrand a business which is starting to go under? Well, if a business is going under, you re-strategize, you reformulate, you go back to the drawing board and say, what are the things that I need to cut out? What are the things that are core and which are doing well? Let me put all my energies into this, and let me start afresh. And it almost becomes like a new startup, because I have seen that a lot of companies who were at the point of completely going bust, just by changing their strategy and just by having a new approach and innovating themselves, they've gone up to being like these world-class players. So, you know, the game never ends. Till the time you're ready to fight, you're ready to put your energies, you're ready to put in efforts, it is never the end. Okay, the end is only when you say, and you pull the plug and you say, this is the end, right? And one thing I want to tell all of you who will start to ideate, who will start their own companies, or will start their own thought processes, right from the beginning, one thing that you must keep in mind is, please work on your, if you have a certain idea or you have a certain IP or a project that you're working on, copyright, trademark, IP, and registering your business, or at least creating your domain name at an early stage is very, very important, so that nobody takes away your idea and starts to work on that, right? So keep these some very important things in mind: your copyright, your trademark, your brand, right? If you want to trademark the brand, otherwise your ideation, all that is your IP, and that is something you have to protect from day one. And that is something you must look into. And there's a lot of information out there on the internet on how you can do that. And it's not very expensive to do it. And yeah, so if I have, Rajesh, missed out on any questions that didn't get answered, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, there's some questions, especially I think there's one on women entrepreneurship, but I'll take the first question on H1B. I'm not too sure if you're aware of this. From whatever I've heard, H1B doesn't enable you to be self-employed in the US. From your experience, how do immigrants for non-US residents start their business in Silicon Valley? That's an interesting one.
See, I won't be able to give you, I mean, I know H1B cannot start their own business. That's something I'm very sure of, right? You have to have residency in that country to be able to start your own business. And fortunately for me, I had my green card, and that's how I started my company. But an innovative way would be that if you happen to be in that country, whether you're a student or whether you are living there, you could find a partner, right, who is a resident or a citizen who becomes a co-founder. The company could actually be registered under them, and you guys do it together. So there are always solutions to these things.
Correct. So what you're saying is somebody who's a non-resident cannot start, isn't it?
Yeah, they can't start on their own.
Okay, Rimjim has a question. The question on women entrepreneurship again. How do you inspire girls in college? How do you boost a startup culture for girls? You know, and you are, Nidhi, very passionate about this.
So,
definitely.
Yeah. So, you know, when I go to colleges, I tell them about my own journey and how being an entrepreneur has helped me through all these phases of life. I've never stopped to work even for a single day. I'm so happy when I work that I never call it my work, right? And I've been very fortunate because I created my passion into my profession, which of course gave me a lot of financial independence, but it's never been work for me, you know. And I've had so much fun doing it, and I'm continuing to do it, right? So while I do this, I work, I still continue to teach dance, but, you know, different hours or at my own flexible pace. The other company that I started was a product-based business. Again, I was very passionate about that idea. I believe that, you know, kids today with so much of pollution around in the world, they are susceptible to a lot of dry skin and eczema. And my own daughter, when she was born, she had this sensitive skin issue. And even one piece of clothing that had synthetic in it, if it went on her body, she would just itch and it was bad. So I said, there's this gap in this market. You know, you need these natural products, which are not as expensive as, you know, a lot of the premium organic products, which are at par with a normal t-shirt you would go and buy at a lifestyle or Shoppers Stop, but it says it's 100% cotton. So they're natural products and they're good for the children's skin. And that's what I want to bring to the market, right? And that's how I started my second company called NeeDB. And that catered to that segment, and that's why it did well. So I think you have to be passionate about what you want to pursue. And for all girls out there, I want to tell you this, that we can multitask. We are good at so many things, in taking care of family, in taking care of our parents, in being able to drive, and being able to conduct our business and still do our passions and go meet our friends and be there for somebody when they need you, all of that. To use this talent or this characteristic that has been given to you, right, which is inherent in you, and capitalize on it. Again, every company or the definition of success is not the next Amazon or Flipkart. The definition of success is what you envision for yourself and what you can create out of it. So if you love music and you want to do something with music and create a profession out of it, then dabble with that idea. You can do so much with it, right? And maybe that could be your business. And then you could be traveling around the world and giving, like, imparting lessons to people or doing shows for people, whatever it is. So there is always a big picture in every small idea.
Great, thanks. We have one more question from Harsh. What's the tie-up or relation between an entrepreneur and an investor? And how does that work? And if money is raised after repayment, what's the interest amount? Can they work independently of an investor? Like, they want to understand more on how this works.
Okay, so see, every equation is different with an investor. What are your terms and conditions? What you go in with? How much equity you part with? What kind of intervention they are allowed to have? And all of that will depend on what you're ready to part in with, what you're getting from it. And that's why I say it's a dark tunnel, and you have to be very careful when you want to tread your path in it, right? Because it's not a rosy picture. There are no free lunches. If they're giving you money, they are expecting a lot more from you in return, not just in terms of your efforts and what you're going to deliver. 10x revenues, they want profitability, they're putting their stake in you. So they're going to push you. Even when you fulfill all of that, or the company goes through an exit, or the company goes through a sale, whatever terms and conditions you all have agreed when they came in as investors is how the proportions will go, the funds will go out, whatever the proceeds are. And after that, I think you're pretty much, again, those contracts are re-signed, and then you figure out what is going to be the role or the investment for each person and the equity stake. So again, it is very, there is no standard rule. It varies from company to company. It varies from the amount of fund that you're raising. But I will just tell you this from my personal experience. For NeeDB, in our third year, we had a lot of interest from investors, from VCs, also because of my contacts in the industry who wanted to invest, and it was a great idea. I toyed with it for a long time, right? And then we decided not to go with funding. And my reason was very simple. A lot of times when we spoke to the investors, 2-3 of them asked me a few questions. And they said, oh, you're selling clothes and it's great, but that's a very small industry. What is the most biggest selling item in the kids industry? I said, yeah, I know. It's like the essentials, your diapers and your bottles. And they said, why aren't you selling that? Why isn't NeeDB selling that? I said, because that's not my core. That's not my vision. That's not what I want NeeDB to be. I don't want to sell diapers. I don't want to sell bottles. I want to stay in lifestyle. And they said, but well, if you're going to put in this kind of money and we need that kind of growth, we have to add more products, and you have to, look into all these items. And that's when I thought that, once I get an investor, what am I getting it at? At what cost? At changing my complete business model, at changing completely what I wanted to or envisioned to deliver. I didn't want that for myself. So I decided to stay away from the investment. So again, it's going to be your call when the time comes. What is it that you're getting on the table? What is it that is being asked of you? And you will probably take the best decision then.
Yeah. In very simple terms, just to add to what Nidhi said, there's always a difference between staying in your own house or staying in a rented house. So when you take an investor, you're always staying in a rented house rather than your own house. So always think about it before you take investment.
So, one of the things I'll urge all of you to pick up and read if you get a chance is there's a book called Jugaad Nation, right? It's one of my favorite startup books, and I take it to a lot of schools and I, read certain stories from there. And these are all stories from emerging markets, so there are startup stories from Mexico, from Indonesia, from India, and they will make you realize that how people have started their businesses from literally zero money, with probably some of them with zero kind of education that we've been privileged with. They didn't even get half of that. And they had a lot less resources than what we have available at our disposal. And still they made a mark in the society and a model, an amazing business model for themselves and for the world. So there's a lot of learnings in that book, and I highly urge all of you to pick it up and read it.
Yeah, so that was one. So there is a message from Sachidanand that says, being a PGDM student, I don't want to go for a job. What can I do to become an entrepreneur? Mindset, attitude, not an idea, and money still. Money can be made, but what about an idea? I know that I'll regret if I don't build something on my own. Yeah, good. In fact, Nidhi is from SP Jain, which is a hotbed for entrepreneurship. And I know every SP Jain student, when they are in B school, they have an idea and want to become an entrepreneur. So Nidhi, please go ahead on this.
Yeah, I see ideation is a process, and it is there in all of us. You just have to have that quiet time and sit down with yourself. And like I said, you can create a process to do it. Put down a list. Maybe we'll do an ideation workshop that can help you through this process. We might do that next, and that can enable you to put down those 10 ideas, out of which one can be that big business idea. But you can create a process of, like I said, what are your areas of interest that could be a business idea for you? What are the gaps in the market that you think you can passionately take up, or you have an expertise or interest in? And there's a whole lot of things, different buckets, which will allow you to think in a very focused way for ideation. From that, your idea will occur, right? I do a lot of workshops with school kids on ideation, and I follow a certain structure to make them think in a way to ideate. And not once has it happened that they've not been able to come or hone in on that one idea that they ultimately want to pursue. So it is absolutely a possibility for everyone. And I also had one question which I, forgot to answer. Probably we can take this as our last question. Samuel had asked that, how do I make an effective LinkedIn profile and resume? So to all of you, I want to say this, that LinkedIn is such a powerful tool, because it's your resume out there in the world, right? And it's there all the time. Anybody can access it. The first time you want to go for an interview or you want to go meet an investor, they're going to Google you immediately. That who's Nidhi Mehta, and then they want to see, and the first thing that's going to come up probably is your LinkedIn profile. So they're going to read that. So it's very, very important to have a very power-packed LinkedIn profile. And also, all of us do a lot of things, but how you project that in your profile is of the importance that will make you stand out from the rest. So on that note, we are going to have our next webinar on Thursday, which is the 30th of April, and which is going to be how to make an effective LinkedIn profile, your power profile on LinkedIn. And that's going to be conducted by an INSEAD alumni, and he has so much of entrepreneurial and amazing leadership work experience. He's currently the president of Corporate Gurukul, Rajesh Gopal, and he's going to take you through, because he's hired so many people, and he knows what they look for when they look up somebody's LinkedIn profile, and what are the do's and don'ts of creating a profile. So he's going to take you through that journey, and I will urge each student to attend that webinar and to make sure that you take those key points to go and revise or create your new profiles on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, just to let everybody know, that would be one of the key sessions. So we are largely working on the future of work. All our webinars are on the future of work. And this started when our alumni started pinging us saying, sir, what should we do? How we should groom ourselves given the COVID situation. So all these webinars around future of work, like today, entrepreneurship being taken by Nidhi, and the next one being taken by Rajesh Gopal, would essentially be towards making you better professionals or better entrepreneurs, either to take up jobs or create jobs. So please leverage your best, because all these webinars will be free. So please join and leverage as much as you can. As Nidhi mentioned, definitely LinkedIn is one platform that everybody searches. And if you're especially applying for a job directly off campus, people will search you out there. So please make the best use of the webinar next week, and we'll communicate the timings to you. Now, Nidhi, is that the last question you want to take, or do we have time?
Yes, I just want to say 2-3 more things. That there are a lot of good stories that can be huge inspirations for you, right? Not just from dorm rooms, but people have started businesses from their garage, right? And in US, this is a typical story, and that's what Silicon Valley is most well known for. Steve Jobs started Apple at 21 from his garage, right? I started my first company from my garage. Elon Musk started his company Zip2 at the age of 24 years, when he had actually enrolled at Stanford to do his PhD, and 2 days later he quit. He dropped out of that and he started Zip2. And that led to the next company, and he sold that company, of course. And today he is what he is because of a series of, he kept trying new things. And every time a company got bought over or something, he shelved and he started a new thing. It gave him more experience. It gave him more courage to do a bigger thing. And today he's made Tesla what it is. It's a completely, it's revolutionized the way automated system works. And if you go to bed, I was just there 3 months ago, and every second car is a Tesla. And you just think that, oh my God, like this guy, they just came in. So it's not about how long you have been in the industry. It's about how powerful your idea is and how much conviction you have. And I can assure you this, if you have that conviction, you have that passion, and you have that powerful idea, you will make it happen. If not in the first year or second year, it will happen in the third or fourth, but it will happen. So thank you so much, for listening to me.
The last part which Nidhi mentioned, if you have conviction around your idea, you will be able to do it. I see a whole lot of other questions around, and I would largely categorize it as conviction. I tell all my students, Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard. Whatever B schools they were in. Steve Jobs also dropped out from college. Harvard, Stanford. There's so many entrepreneurs who have dropped out. If you can drop out of your SRM, if you can drop out of BITS Pilani, if you can drop out of any place that you are currently in, then do believe that your idea is strong enough, right? So don't worry. In fact, there's so many other questions that have conceptualized idea, how to attract technology, investment. First thing is burn your bridges and just drop out if you really believe in your idea. The other thing, like Nidhi was mentioning, and I am an entrepreneur myself, is don't worry so much about your cash. I see a lot of people saying, where will I get funding? Where will I get cash? Don't worry so much about your cash. All right. I have myself lived on Howrah Station platform, and I have operated out of there. I used to, I left a job which was 150,000 Singapore dollars, 75 lakhs, and I started with zero. There was no business plan. I just went to Odisha and I started. A lot of people who are there, they know that. So all these questions, I'll bucket it under conviction. And if you have the conviction, you can operate out of any railway station in India, and you can operate with one meal a day, and you'll be successful. So when you're fearless, you can really be successful. I must thank Nidhi a lot for all the ideas, and thanks so much to all of you for joining us for 1.5 hours. The idea is really to groom the next generation of job creators. I'm sure even if 5 of you go out there and create jobs, India and the world will be a better place. So please go ahead and do that. And don't forget to sign up for our next webinar on how to build a powerful LinkedIn profile. Nidhi, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Exit. Exit. Leave. नीचे.
Hello.
Yes, Harshit.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
I'm so glad that I can talk to you right now. And please can you answer my question? I'll read it out for you. Since last 22 years, my mother has been running a business of combination of beauty parlor, boutique, and women apparels. How can we scale up and without external how can we scale up without external investment? Reading about your company, Mompreneurs, on your profile, I request you to please share your ideas on how we should proceed.
You know, Harshit, why don't you do this? You sent me an email because I think your voice is wavering. I heard something on Women Pala or something.
Yes.
And I need to exit to get into another meeting right now. So
Okay.
you can send an email on contact@corporategurukul.com.
Okay. May I
And,
please text
you know,
you on LinkedIn?
sure, you can do that. You can do that. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure. I'll take
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Rajesh, listen, my mouse is not working. I think maybe you took my mouse access. I'm not being able to exit. I don't know. I'm still there on the webinar and there are 13 people. Yes. Okay, 1 second. For all.